Zoom in a little, or is that good?
Come on up, Pete. They're trying to get behind you.
You guys are all on this side.
Do we have everybody? All right. Everybody good? Come in closer. Good afternoon. We are here today because humans are not perfect. We're not even close to being infallible. And automakers know this. It's why our cars have numerous devices to alert us when we leave the door open or the trunk open or our tire needs air. Right now, we have technology that can solve the problem of children dying in hot cars. Humans' infallibility should not result in the fatalities of these babies, especially in 2019. Hardly a day goes by that in automotive news press, when there's an article about autonomous cars, auto companies have been investing billions of dollars to be the first one to get these on the roads. And Advocates is hopeful for the safety promise autonomous cars will be delivered. But right now, today, we have technology that could be put into cars to protect babies and to prevent the lives of parents, families, and communities from being shattered. We have a couple of cars here today that can demonstrate this technology that we invite you all to go and check out after the event. It's here today and it needs to be in all cars. You may hear some pushback that it might be too expensive or who could possibly leave a baby in a car. We have always gotten pushback when we've tried to advance safety improvements in cars, whether it's airbags or seatbelts or electronic stability control or even rear view cameras, which are now in all new cars as of May of last year. What all of these advances have in common is that they work, they save lives, and their costs drop significantly when they're required to be in cars. With summertime upon us, it should be a time of family fun. Let's get legislation passed to prevent child passengers from dying in hot cars and to protect the wholeness of families. I'd like to thank our nation's leaders on this issue, Senators Wicker and Blumenthal and Representatives Ryan, Schakowsky, and King. I'd first like to introduce Senator Richard Blumenthal. Representing the state of Connecticut, Senator Blumenthal is the chair of the Senate Commerce Subcommittee on Manufacturing, Trade, and Consumer Protection. As a longtime member of the Senate Commerce Committee, which holds jurisdiction over highway and auto safety, Senator Blumenthal has accumulated numerous legislative accomplishments that are helping to save lives every day on our roads. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Let me thank you all for being here. I want to thank particularly the parents, the advocates, the caregivers who are here, whose real life stories are more powerful than any of our words. Their stories are about senseless, tragic, unnecessary deaths. 52 of them last year alone, and there will be another 50 plus this year unless parents do the right thing. Look before you lock. That's common sense. But parents are fallible. What a newsflash. Parents are busy. They're stopping at the cleaners or the supermarket just to pick up something. They're going to be in the fast lane, check out. So they'll leave their child in the car. That is a path to tragedy. And let me just be very blunt. There is nothing red or blue about those lives. There is nothing red or blue about the tragedies that result because car manufacturers and consumers lack the technology in cars out there on the roads right now. And even though this map has colors distinguishing the states, they are not political red or blue. This measure is bipartisan. The technology is available and accessible, whether it's sensor or other kind of detection system, it should be adopted. In mere minutes, cars become death traps. They can rise to 120 degrees when the temperature out is just 80. They can rise to above 100 degrees when the temperature is in the 60s. We know that fact. It's common sense. Anybody living in this town or anywhere during the summer knows how cars overheat. For us, they are uncomfortable. For children, they are death traps. And that's why this legislation is so important, to guarantee the health and safety of children. We should all be passionate about it. There is no excuse for failing to adopt this legislation, for failing to incorporate this technology. In Connecticut, we've known firsthand this tragedy. Our state was riveted on one of these unfortunate deaths in an infant. And I still have riveted in my mind the image of those parents, particularly the father, who left his child in the car simply because he forgot. Look before you lock. Never forget the child in the car. This technology ought to be as common sense and common as seat belts and locks and every other safety feature on a car. And I want to thank again the organizers, my colleagues from Congress who are here. It is truly bipartisan and bicameral, and we have no excuse for failing to move forward. Thank you all.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. I'd next like to introduce Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky. Congresswoman Schakowsky has served Illinois' 9th Congressional District for more than 2 decades. She is the chairwoman of the House Energy and Commerce Subcommittee on Consumer Protection and Commerce, which has jurisdiction over motor vehicle safety, and is holding a hearing tomorrow on this very critical highway safety issue. Thank you for your leadership, Congresswoman.
I'm so happy to be here today. I'm so happy to be here with my colleagues. As you've heard, this is bipartisan legislation, House and Senate, and bicameral. So we can't protect our children from all hazards. Children get sick. Children get cancer. Children are sometimes born with disabilities that take their lives. But there are things we can protect our children from. I was so proud to be the chief sponsor of the bill that put rear view cameras in all cars so that children weren't backed over in their driveways, again, often by the people who love them the most. And so I thank also the advocates that are here, but especially the parents who likely will never forgive themselves, but have transformed their pain into making sure that no other parents have to experience a child being left in a car and dying as a consequence. Sometimes I've met with parents where the child was actually rescued in time, but that doesn't always happen. And by the way, it's animals as well. Dogs can be in the back seat, and many perish. But 52 children died last summer. Are we going to continue to allow it? The answer is absolutely no. And so our bill simply says that you have to have a warning. Think of all the bells and whistles that we have in our car. You have to have a warning when you leave your car. You should get that warning if you leave a child in a car. And that's what our bill does. We would require all new vehicles to be equipped with an alert system. We don't specify a technology right now to make sure that the driver checks the back seat. And the safety technology has already been developed. It's here. And it's being introduced in more and more vehicles. And now it's time for the Congress of the United States to act. As chair of the Consumer Protection and Subcommittee on the Energy and Commerce Committee, making cars and roads safer is a priority. And last year, as I said, the rear view cameras, and now we have to have a technology that prevents the kind of tragedies that you're going to hear about from the people who have lost the most. So we're here today to save lives, and I'm very proud that we're going to advance this bill, hopefully really quickly before it gets too hot and before we lose another child. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd now like to introduce Congressman Tim Ryan. Congressman Ryan represents the 13th District of Ohio and is currently in his 9th term. He is a champion for families, and he is also a member of the House Appropriations Committee. Yet, perhaps most importantly, he is a father who cares deeply about the hot cars issue. Thank you, Congressman Ryan, for being here today and for your leadership.
Thank you so much. I'll be brief. I want to first thank Chairwoman Schakowsky for her leadership on this over the past few years, Senator Blumenthal and all the other members who have been so helpful. But the most thanks goes to the parents and the caregivers who are here today. I don't think there's anything that speaks to someone's courage or integrity or character like someone who takes a tragedy that's happened in their lives and, as Representative Schakowsky has said, transforms that into a greater cause to save other lives. And so I don't know how difficult it is. I can only imagine how difficult it is for you to be here today and over the past few years advocating for this. But we are getting close to the goal line and saving many hundreds and potentially thousands of lives over the next few years. So your work is helping, and it's making all the difference in the world. It's how we move legislation in Congress and in the country. It's through the stories that we hear and have heard over the past few years. So I just want to say thank you to the families. We're praying for you. We love you, and you're setting a pretty big example for how we need to be citizens here in the United States. I want to make one last point that Representative Schakowsky, Senator Blumenthal, myself, and others are saying with this piece of legislation is that the government... You got it?
Our staff will get it. It's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. One last point I want to make that is informing all of us. We have to change the perception in Washington and around the country about what the government can do to solve problems. And this is a perfect example of something that Congress can act on to actually save lives. There's a long list, but this is one of them. The government can work. It can do things. It can make life safer and better for its citizens if we come together in a bipartisan way like we're doing here. We're going to get this done. This is going to save lives, and I hope it's an example, Jan, for all of the other actions that we need to take. Government can work if we make it work, if we want it to work, and we do, and that's why we're going to end up fixing this mess here with the Hot Cars Act. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'd next like to introduce Miles and Carol Harrison, who join us here today from Purcellville, Virginia. They are the parents of Chase, who died on July 8th, 2008, at the age of 21 months, after being unknowingly left in a car. There are no words for me to express the amount of respect that I have for their courage to be here and to be devoting their time and their emotional resources to help to prevent other people from having to suffer this unbearable tragedy. Thanks, Miles.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the wonderful congressmen and congresswomen and senators who are trying to save the lives of the children. So I believe that they're the real heroes here. So I want to thank you both very, very much for championing this. And then, of course, Ms. Jeanette Fennell, who I've come to know pretty well over the last few years and has become a dear friend and quite a supporter. And without her strength, it would be very difficult for me and my wife, Carol, to be able to stand here. So thank you as well. 11 years ago, it was a typical day, getting everyone up and ready to head out of the door, as well to get myself to work on time. Like so many parents, I was multitasking, getting my child ready, making sure we had everything packed, and rushing around the typical morning busyness. My world changed forever that day. When I went to my office, I was focused on fixing all the problems at work because that was my job. The day flew by. I went to lunch with my boss to update him on the status of my work projects, the events of the day. Then, having no idea what time it was, a colleague came into my office toward the end of the day and said, "Hey, do you have a doll in your car?" Stunned, I had no idea why he would ask such a question, and I couldn't imagine what he was talking about. I stood up and started to go through what I had done that day, and then realized, oh my God, no. Oh my God, no. I rushed to the car, and as I came upon the side window, I saw Chase. I had not dropped him off at daycare as I had intended. I ripped open the car door, pulled him from the car seat, and ran into my office with him in my arms, screaming and crying and calling out for help. It was too late. I was so distraught and upset and completely incapacitated, I spent hours in the emergency room. The nurse offered me painkillers to make me feel better, but I refused and said I did not deserve to not feel the pain. The police demanded that I be brought to the station and interviewed. The detective started asking all sorts of questions like, did you have life insurance on your son? It started to hit me that I had killed my son. I did it. My poor sweet little boy. God, take me now and return him to his beautiful mother. Please, God, not him. Take me. I had to be hospitalized for several weeks and even registered under a fake name because I would have been arrested the moment I left the hospital. Tragically, I was not even allowed to attend my son's funeral. My story continues with a very public trial, fighting a charge of involuntary manslaughter, of which, thank God, I was found not guilty after 3 days in the courtroom. It really didn't matter to me whether I was found guilty or innocent. I considered myself guilty. Guilty and full of shame and anger. I cry every day for Chase. I still have not forgiven myself and don't know if I have the capacity to do so. I look at my wife in amazement. She never wavered. She stayed with me, and we're still together. She's the most beautiful, wonderful wife in the world. After the trial, Gene Weingarten from the Washington Post wrote a Pulitzer Prize-winning feature article titled "Fatal Distraction" about what my family went through. He somehow was able to capture the essence of how otherwise wonderful parents could be involved in a parent's worst nightmare. He was able to explain this modern-day phenomena in a way that people could understand and relate to. This did not have to happen. If there had been a simple chime to alert me of my son's presence, none of this would have happened. How can this be that in our great country, it is not mandatory that the simplest alarm not be required in all cars? Children are dying, families are being destroyed unnecessarily. This has got to stop. In our son's honor, we have made it our mission to try to prevent this unspeakable tragedy from happening to other parents. Every time we hear of another child dying, we ask why. Why does this keep happening when there is technology available to prevent it? Every loving, caring parent must realize that this disaster could happen to them. They need to be made aware of this phenomena. I urge Congress to take immediate action to save lives by requiring proven technology that would alert to an unattended occupant of the vehicle. Thank you. And thank you all for your patience with me here.
So we need to stop asking why, like Miles just spoke about, and we need to say when. And when is this going to happen? It needs to happen immediately. And we are committed to getting this legislation over the finish line. We have wonderful leaders in both the House and the Senate, Republican and Democrat. This is not a political issue. This is a personal issue, and this technology should be in all cars now. I'd next like to introduce Erin Hawley. Erin came here today from Charleston, South Carolina, to share what happened with her son, Finn, in 2017.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm here today representing two groups of people affected by hot car deaths and the need for technology to prevent them. First, I'm one of countless parents who have unknowingly left my child in a vehicle. When my gorgeous, funny, now 2-year-old son, Finn, was 4 weeks old, we hadn't slept in basically 4 weeks. We were moving between houses. That was not going well. And we used 2 cars to move things from one storage unit to another, and we had one child in each car. And we thought we had consolidated the whole family to one car. And we parked the other one, and we drove about 15 minutes away to a park to take a walk together as a family. And when we got there, and I went to move the baby to the stroller from the car, I realized our mistake. And screamed, "Oh my God, the baby." And we raced back to the other car. We called the paramedics en route. We beat them to the car, which was, thank God, still cool. The baby was sleeping. He was unaware. The paramedics checked his vitals and he was fine. But in that moment, I knew that this can happen to any family. And my husband and I vowed to never tell anyone that this had happened to us, because there is so much shame. If someone had offered me technology in a car seat that was optional that I could pay for to prevent leaving my child in a hot car, I would have thought, that's a great idea. I don't need it. I would never leave my baby in a car. But then unfortunately, a few months later, I became a member of a community completely devastated by one of these hot car losses. When a baby in Finn's daycare class died in a hot car, on April 3rd, his father, who's an accountant, drove to work, probably with accounting on his mind. He didn't stop at the daycare. And when the mom came to pick the baby up at the end of the day, they told her he hadn't been there all day. And the daycare director drove that mother to the hospital to meet up with her husband and to hold her baby for the last time. I don't know that family personally. I had seen their baby many, many days. But the teachers and the daycare director and I have grieved that together as if it was our own child. I was so emotionally wrecked for months that my hairdresser asked a few months later what was troubling me, and when I told her, she and I cried together and talked about how unfair it is that a family should have to lose a child like this. And then on the very next visit to my hairdresser, she told me that her best friend's 7-month-old had just died in a hot car. The dad forgot that he had picked the baby up early to spend the afternoon playing with him. He was extremely sleep deprived, and he went home and he took a long nap. And their baby died in their car, in their driveway, a few feet from a father that would have traded everything to save his son's life. These deaths, and 4 others in South Carolina last year, each with very similar, relatable stories, and 46 others in the United States in just 1 year, were preventable. We can fix this. It's not a great philosophical debate. The technology already exists. There's not a huge expense involved. Every time I open my car door, all this summer, when that wave of hot air hits me, I'm going to be overcome with the thought that right at this moment there could be a child trapped in a hot car that needs us. And no one can hear him or her, not even his parents. My car can tell me the air pressure of all 4 tires and how much life is left in the battery, but it can't tell me that I inadvertently left a child in the car, or that a child snuck into the car, or a pet, with a simple alarm. It's not fair that our family got to celebrate our 2-year-old's birthday this week, and that Jack's family did not get to celebrate his 2nd birthday yesterday. And it is not fair that their act of pure love, of buckling that baby into the back seat in a rear-facing car seat, as far away from an airbag as they could possibly get him, that act of love cost him his life and cost that family their beautiful, adorable, happy, round-faced boy. Awareness of hot car deaths is at an all-time high. There are NHTSA ads, there's tons of media coverage. You're hearing stories, unfortunately, all too regularly. We can't do much more to educate people. I am proof that parents and caregivers do not believe that this can happen to them. And yet hot car deaths are on the rise, setting a record in 2018. This is a solvable problem. The solution is ready, and everyone will win. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erin. I'd next like to introduce Christine Vladke of Boston, Massachusetts. Christine was an EMT who responded to a fatal hot car incident in 2012.
Hi. Pediatric vehicular heat stroke is a tragic yet preventable issue which can be solved by effective leadership and proven technology. Almost 900 children have died in hot cars since 1990. I was personally involved in trying to save one of these children. It was a devastating experience that I will never forget. Until technology to alert the driver that a backseat passenger has been left in a vehicle after the car is shut off is included in all cars, this crisis will continue because no one thinks this could ever happen to them. Many don't realize how deeply these tragedies affect first responders. I was no stranger to trauma and death during my years as an EMT in Massachusetts. Even so, I never thought I would encounter a hot car death in a state not known for having hot weather. In 2012, I responded to a 911 call for an infant left in a vehicle. The event occurred at the end of August, and the temperature was around 80 degrees. Prior to our arrival, the father had already removed the boy from the vehicle and taken him into the house, where he lay lifeless on their living room floor. The mother was outside screaming that her baby wasn't breathing, and the neighbors began coming to her aid. The parents' 2 other children were upstairs listening to the events unfolding. My partner and I were the first to arrive. We ran into the house and immediately started CPR. The entire time, the infant's blue eyes were wide open and staring back at us, but lifeless. Within minutes, police officers and the fire department arrived. Saving a life is never a gentle process, and even these seasoned professionals couldn't look at the disturbing medical interventions that we were doing. Within minutes, the trauma of performing CPR caused blood to pour out of the boy's mouth and nose. I cried the entire time while performing chest compressions. It went on for almost 30 minutes. Soon after arriving at the hospital, the boy was pronounced dead. 30 minutes after he was pronounced, his internal temperature had only lowered to 109 degrees. 30 minutes after he was pronounced dead. And he was only in the car for 2 hours. Even if he had survived, he would have suffered permanent brain damage and multiple organ failure with no quality of life. Every first responder on that call was forever traumatized. Personally, I was diagnosed with PTSD and required significant methods of treatment. After 12 years of practice, I couldn't do it anymore. Within 2 years of the hot cars incident, I had to quit the profession that I loved and was very well respected in and focus on a different field. It's important for everyone to understand that these tragedies have long-lasting impacts on whole communities. The ripple effect is much larger than you can imagine. I think about what happened every day, and I still have triggers, which greatly impact the quality of life for both my work and family. I have continued to hope that something good will come out of a terrible situation, and that is why I've come here today. I urge Congress to take swift action to require technology in all new cars that will prevent hot car tragedies. The suffering must stop, especially when there is proving technology to do so. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. I'd now like to introduce Jeanette Fennell. Jeanette is the president and founder of kidsandcars.org. She is also the current consumer co-chair of our organization, Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. Jeanette is a tenacious advocate who spearheaded the trunk release mechanism being required in cars. She founded kidsandcars.org to protect children in and around motor vehicles, and her organization is dedicated to raising awareness and educating the public about non-traffic incidents. Jeanette was at the forefront of pushing for the rearview camera requirement in the Cameron-Gulbranson Kids Transportation Safety Act, together with Congressman Schakowsky. And once again, she is here today at the forefront pushing for this end of hot car deaths and injuries. Thanks, Jeanette.
Every summer, as the temperatures begin to rise, we at kidsandcars.org brace ourselves, because we know what's coming. Since 1990, almost 900 children have lost their lives in hot cars. That's over 900 families and the community enduring every day this what is simply unimaginable. This loss of life is even more tragic when we know that there are solutions. We need this technology, and we need to require it right now to save these innocent lives. As everyone has said today, nobody thinks a hot car tragedy is going to happen to them. So why do these injuries and deaths continue to happen? And why do we not put in place that critical technology that can prevent these heartbreaking incidents? Every day, every week, every month, every year, we work tirelessly to educate parents and caregivers about these dangers. Our efforts at kidsandcars.org include the Look Before You Lock program, where we have sent over 1 million Look Before You Lock cards to birthing hospitals around this country. We want people to know from the day their baby's born about this danger. But obviously, education is not enough. The numbers are not going down. Last year was the largest number of fatalities. 52 children, one every week, died in a hot car. And all it takes is a simple change in your routine to have something this devastating take your child's life. This is not what we should accept in this country. You know, current state laws require putting a baby in rear facing in the back seat, and it has saved countless lives. But there are some unintended consequences of that shift to out of sight of our quiet little unobtrusive passengers. They can also slip out of mind. Do you know that if you're in a car and you're the driver, you cannot tell if there is a baby in a rear-facing car seat or not? You have no idea, because that's totally blind to you. But we live in a very fast-paced society today. We have all sorts of reminders. Put on your seatbelt. Your gas tank is low. Don't leave your keys in the ignition. Don't forget to turn off your headlights. The alert we're asking for is so simple, just in case those little rear-facing quiet passengers get forgotten. We get an alarm, we get a beep, we get a chime to let us know someone is still back there. I mean, we live in a world today where technology runs our lives. I mean, our smartphones tell us where we should be and when we should be there and know that we're in the right place. But don't we feel pretty lost without our smartphones, right? Our dependence on technology helps us to make it through our overscheduled lives. So if technology exists to prevent these tragedies, what are we waiting for? It's a matter of life and death. I think the most important thing for people to understand or possibly take away from what we're trying to tell you about today is we are humans and we are fallible. We have a brain. Our brain works well, but not all the time. And I don't think a parent should have to pay with their life of their child for the one time they lost awareness that that child was alone in their vehicle. I know people don't like to hear that, but the same mechanisms that if we put a cup of coffee on the top of our car and forget it and drive away, or even leave our keys somewhere, it's the same mechanism in our brain that causes us to unknowingly leave a child alone in a hot car. We know technology works. Today, technology saves lives. It even saves your car battery. Tomorrow, it could save your child's life.
Thank you, Jeanette. Our final speaker today is Ron Kraus. Ron represents the Emergency Nurses Association, which is also a board member of Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. Ron is the Secretary-Treasurer of the ENA Board of Directors. He's from Indiana and joins us today to share the vital perspective of emergency nurses who treat the victims of hot cars. Thanks, Ron.
Emergency Nurses Association believes emergency nurses, as members of the frontline care team, are poised to lead in the prevention of injury through evidence-based education, public education, and healthcare advocacy. Since becoming an emergency department nurse in 1996, I have unfortunately seen firsthand the devastation of death and injuries involving motor vehicles. All these instances are tragic, but even more so when they're preventable. Hot car deaths and injuries are a particular case in which solutions are available that can stop them from happening. Technology clearly has potential to save lives. Emergency departments around the country use technology each and every day to give patients best care. Technology also has the power on the front end to prevent people from becoming patients in the first place. In this case, systems can be built into vehicles that will alert parents, and other caregivers to check the back seat to make sure a child is not left unintentionally behind. This available tool should be fully deployed in all new cars as means of prevention. As stated earlier by my colleagues, humans are fallible. Reminders and alerts are necessary parts of our everyday lives to account for our stress, fatigue, and change of routine, and to keep us on track of our daily task. I join my fellow speakers here today calling on Congress to enact legislation that would require cars to be equipped with reminder technology. We have the abilities to save lives. Thank you.
We would be glad to open up to any questions to the accredited media. And we also, just a reminder that we do have some vehicles here on site so that you can see how some of the different technologies work, because there's not just one solution to this problem. And this bill would not limit the technology. It is the purpose is to inspire innovation and technology. So please feel free to ask any questions of any of our speakers, and thank you for coming today. Any questions? Let's go see the cars then. Let's go check out the cars then. Thank you.